I was taking summer classes at the time, and we had a 3-day weekend in June. I thought it would be a good idea to explore the wilderness in Virginia. I searched on Google and found a state park with a nice trail, so I decided to go there. I packed my backpack with all the essentials: food, water, a tent, and some clothes. I also made sure to tell my roommate and my family which trail I was going to hike, just in case something happened. When I got close to the park, I saw a small outdoor shop where hikers on the Appalachian Trail often stop. I decided to go in and get a map of the area. While talking to the owner, he mentioned a lesser-known trail that had a cool waterfall and a swimming hole. He told me it was a beautiful spot that not many people knew about. I thought it sounded like a great place to visit, so I asked him to show me the trail on the map. It was located outside the state park, but he said it was definitely worth the trip. I paid for the map and thanked the owner. Then I texted my roommate and parents about the new trail before parking my car and starting my adventure. I should mention that the waterfall was just a side trip from my main hike. I was planning to spend 3 days and 2 nights on the trail. I started on a section of the Appalachian Trail, which was fairly busy with other hikers. Some of them were really fun to talk to. As I got farther from the main trails, I saw fewer and fewer people. By early afternoon, maybe 3 miles from my destination, I noticed something strange. It was unnaturally silent. No birds, no bugs, not even wind. And I had this weird feeling, like someone was watching me. I tried to ignore it. I figured I was just overthinking things. When I got to the waterfall, it wasn't as impressive as I had hoped, but it was still nice. There was a good-sized area for swimming, so I took off my clothes and went for a swim. Afterward, while I was getting dressed again, I started whistling to myself. I was whistling "Chill Bill" because it was stuck in my head. That's when I heard something whistle the same tune, back at me. At first, I thought it was just a bird copying me. I started whistling back and forth with it. Whatever I whistled, it would repeat, note for note. I actually thought it was pretty cool at first. But while I was setting up camp, that uneasy feeling came back. It felt like something was watching me. My skin kept breaking out in goosebumps, and the hairs on my arms stood straight up. As night fell, I built a small fire and used my Jetboil to cook dinner. While I was doing that, I noticed something strange. There was no sound at all. Just complete, absolute silence. Part of me felt like I wasn't safe, like something wanted me to leave. But I pushed that feeling aside and decided to stay. I crawled into my tent with a flashlight and a book. I actually fell asleep without any problems. But when I woke up the next morning, my campsite was a mess. My camp stool was missing. And worse, my bear bag, the one holding all my food, had been cut down. At first, I thought maybe a clever animal had chewed through the rope to get to the food. But when I looked closely, I saw the rope had been cut. Not chewed, cut cleanly, like with something very sharp. Keep in mind, I was at least 6 to 8 miles from the nearest road. While I was still trying to figure out what happened, I heard a branch snap somewhere in the distance. I turned quickly to look, but I didn't see anything. Then I heard the whistling again. It was the same tune I had whistled the day before. But this time, it sounded different. Sinister. Twisted. The sound made the hair on the back of my neck stand straight up. And something inside me just screamed, "Leave. Now." The whistling got closer. So I started packing my camp as fast as I could. I didn't bother putting anything away neatly, I just shoved everything into my bag, panicking the whole time. The whistling didn't stop. It came from every direction. Finally, I got fed up and stood up, shouting into the woods. That's when the whistling stopped. For a moment, everything went completely silent. Then, I heard a voice repeat exactly what I had just shouted, in my own voice. It sounded like me, but distorted. Like it was coming from an old TV, or a warped speaker. As soon as I heard that, I threw on my pack and took off running. I followed the trail back the way I had come, moving as fast as I could. I could hear it following me, switching between whistling and mimicking my voice. It was like it was playing with me, staying just close enough to be heard, but never letting me see it. Eventually, the sound started to fade. Then it stopped completely. So I stopped too, and turned around. I wish I hadn't. The moment I turned, I heard the most terrifying screech I've ever heard, right next to me. It was loud, high-pitched, and unnatural. It felt like it came from inside my own skull. I didn't look back again. I just ran. I kept moving, pushing my legs as fast as they would go. After less than half a mile, I came across a couple who were also out backpacking. They looked immediately concerned when they saw me. I must have looked like a wreck. They asked if I was okay, and if I had been the one screaming. I quickly told them what had happened. The couple decided not to go down the trail I had just come from. We all quickly made our way toward a more populated trail, where we felt a little safer. As soon as I got back to my car, I drove straight to one of the park's ranger stations and reported everything that had happened. But since the site was technically outside the state park, they said it wasn't really their responsibility. Still, one of the rangers said they would send someone to check it out. The parking lot at the ranger station was right next to the woods. And just as I was getting into my Jeep, I heard it again. That same whistled tune, Chill Bill, coming softly from the trees in front of me. It was the exact same pattern I had whistled back at the waterfall. I didn't wait around. I jumped in, locked the doors, and drove away without looking back. When I got home and told my roommate why I was back after only one night, all he said was, "Bro, I'm never going camping with you." Story number 2. I grew up in a small, cold town in the Appalachian Mountains. Our house sat on the side of a mountain that overlooked the town, and it was a great place for a kid who loved being outside. But we didn't have any close neighbors, and there were lots of woods to explore and play in. Above our house was a long ridge that marked the edge of a state park. All the official trails and public areas were far down in the valley, separated from our land by a thick forest and a bunch of "no trespassing" signs. Because of that, we hardly ever had hikers wander onto our property. There was a rough dirt road that led from our house up the mountain to the top of the ridge. At the very top, there were the remains of an old burned-down cabin. From there, if you followed the ridge, you'd reach a flat area popular with some of my dad's hunting buddies. One of those guys had even put up a trail camera during the off-season to keep an eye on the wildlife. We had coyotes, the occasional bear, mountain lions, bobcats, and a lot of deer. If you kept going past that area, the ridge climbed higher and opened up into a wide clearing with big flat rocks and a giant electrical tower. The tower was fun to climb, so I often went there with our black lab, Felicia, and spent hours reading, climbing, and enjoying nature. One early fall day, when I was about 13, I hiked up there with a backpack full of snacks and a book. I was careful to avoid the trail cam on the way. It was one of those old film types, and I'd already gotten in trouble before for using up a whole roll of film just by messing around near it. I reached my favorite rock near the edge of the clearing by the power lines and had just started to read when Felicia suddenly started barking. She growled loudly and aggressively. At first, I didn't think much of it. She loved to chase deer. But this time, she didn't run off into the woods like she usually did. Instead, she stayed close to me, growling at something. She was focused on the steep mountain slope facing the park, where the trees and bushes grew dense. Whatever she saw was hidden deep in the thick brush. I had actually thought about hiking down that way into the park before, but the path was difficult and overgrown. Years ago, that whole area had been cleared to install the electrical tower, but since then, it had grown back wild, full of thorns, briars, and tangled weeds. The same rocks that were so fun to climb also made that slope dangerous to descend. Climbing up to the top of the ridge had never been easy. The steep slopes below were full of obstacles, fallen branches, slippery rocks, and thick undergrowth. Besides, there were easier routes near the main park entrance. The slope in front of me led down to an undeveloped area behind the campgrounds. It was hard to reach by car or on foot. So I was surprised, really surprised, to see a man pushing through the brush from that direction. Feeling a bit nervous, I called out, hello. I reached down and held Felicia by the collar. She had a habit of jumping on people when she got excited, and the last thing I needed was for her to accidentally knock this guy down the mountain. I remembered my parents arguing once about lawsuits after she'd knocked over a jogger on a public trail. The man smiled, got himself free from the briars, and climbed up to the base of my rock. I couldn't tell if it was the way Felicia was acting, growling and staying close to me, or the fact that the guy had come from such an unusual direction, but something about him made me uneasy. Still, he seemed normal, friendly enough. He looked like he was in his mid to late 20s. Average height. Average build. He didn't stand out in any particular way. He was dressed like a hiker, but he wasn't carrying a backpack or any supplies. What really bothered me, though, was the way he was looking at me. I couldn't explain it at the time, but now, as an adult, I can clearly see it. He was sizing me up. From his smile, he seemed happy with what he saw. "Hi there," he said. "Where'd you come from?" He didn't have any accent, which struck me as strange. Our area had a thick, unmistakable regional drawl, and we didn't get many outsiders. "I live just down the hill," I said. "I was hiking with my dog." "She seems like a nice dog," he said. Felicia was shaking with anger, growling low and steady. But he didn't seem bothered by her at all. "You should have her on a leash," he added casually. "You wouldn't want to get in trouble with the park." "We put her on a leash when we're in the park," I told him. "But this part is our property." He didn't react at all to the fact that he was trespassing. "Still," he said, "you never know who you might run into up here. So close to the park and all." "No one from the park comes up here," I replied, sharper than I meant to. I was annoyed that a stranger was trying to tell me what to do with my dog, on my family's land. "I'm from the park," he said, smiling again. "One of the rangers. I just wanted to check out the property." Then he added, "What would you have done if she'd attacked me? You could get in big trouble." The second he said that, my gut twisted. We only had one ranger in our area, and he was a close family friend. This man? He definitely wasn't him. But I was too scared to show that I knew he was lying. So, trying to play it cool, I pulled Felicia's leash out of my pack and clipped it onto her collar. Then I stood up, slung my backpack over my shoulder, and said, "Sorry, we'll let you get on with your hike. I need to head home." "Do your parents know you're up here?" he asked. "Oh yes," I said quickly. "They expect me home soon." "Do they come up here often?" he pressed. "Dad does," I said. "He checks the trail cameras." I made that up on the spot. But the moment I said it, I saw something change. The man's smile faded, for just a second. "Trail cameras?" "Yeah," I said. "There are a lot up here. He and his friends like to hunt." His smile came back, but it was different now. Cold. "Well," he said, "this would be great for hunting, wouldn't it?" Then he stepped toward me. Felicia lunged. Hard. The leash nearly tore from my hands. Somehow, I managed to hold her back, just in time. She was ready to rip him apart, and the strange thing was, he didn't flinch at all. "You should head back," he said with a strange smile. "Keep a tight hold on that leash. Maybe I'll see you up here again sometime." "Yes. Maybe," I replied, though secretly, I was thinking, I'm never setting foot in these woods again. I quickly turned and walked away with Felicia. Every few steps, I glanced back over my shoulder. He stood exactly where I'd left him, still smiling, still staring. Once he was out of sight, I picked up the pace. Felicia growled softly and kept looking behind us. I could hear branches snapping now and then, like something, or someone, was moving through the brush behind us. But when I turned to look, I didn't see anything. I cut across the clearing, right past the trail camera. At that point, I didn't care about getting caught on film, I just wanted to get home. Once we reached the old dirt road, I unclipped Felicia's leash and started to jog. She stayed right beside me the whole way down the mountain. When we finally got home, I didn't tell my parents about the strange man. They were already nervous about me hiking alone, and I didn't want to give them a reason to ban me from the ridge completely. By the time I sat down and calmed down, I had convinced myself I had overreacted. Maybe he was just a hiker. Maybe he made up the ranger story to spook me for fun. Still, I avoided the ridge for the rest of the week. I stayed close to home, wandering only the woods directly behind our house. A few days later, I came home from school and found my dad waiting, furious. He asked me if I had messed with the trail camera. Apparently, his friend had gone up to collect the film and found that the camera had been turned off, and there were only a few pictures on the roll. I was nervous about getting in trouble, so I insisted over and over that I hadn't touched it. But then I remembered the stranger. I told my dad everything, how I met the man, what he said, and what happened. He didn't believe me. He thought I was just making up a story to cover for messing with the camera. Still, he decided to call the park ranger to double-check, just in case there really was a new ranger we hadn't heard about. The ranger said no. There were no new rangers in the area. But after hearing my story, he did mention something unsettling. A campground worker had recently found an out-of-state man camping illegally behind the park grounds. It was the same weekend I'd run into the stranger. They assumed the guy was just trying to avoid paying for a proper site. He was described as young, average-looking, and very friendly. Soon after that, my dad's friend dropped off the developed film from the camera. Even though there were only a few photos, the last one gave us all chills. It was a picture of me and Felicia, crossing the clearing. Just moments after I left the stranger behind. I'm so glad I told him there were several cameras in the area. I guess he gave up when he couldn't find the others. Since then, my parents have moved to a nice neighborhood down in the valley. I've moved out of town completely. The old house we lived in sat empty for a long time, slowly falling apart. Eventually, it burned down. No one lives there now. But the clearing at the top of the ridge, the one with the flat rocks and the tower. It's still there. Still quiet. Still popular with hunters. Story number 3. Around 5 years ago, when I was 13, I had a habit of sneaking out of my bedroom window late at night. I didn't do it for fun or rebellion, I did it because I found peace in the silence of the early hours. It helped me escape the noise, the tension, and the pressure I felt living with my caretakers. Most nights, I would quietly climb out after midnight and wander aimlessly until 3 or 4 in the morning. There was something calming about the empty streets, the cool air, and the sense of solitude. I felt free. One night during one of my walks, I came across the entrance to a small forest. It was too dark to see anything beyond the first few trees, so I turned around and went home. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. The next night, I returned. This time with a flashlight and a handful of sticks, which I stuck into the ground at intervals to mark my path. I didn't go far, just enough to satisfy my curiosity. I didn't find much, just a hedgehog rustling in the underbrush. But the atmosphere was perfect. It was easily the most peaceful place I had discovered during my nightly walks. So I kept going back. For the next 3 nights, I returned to the same spot. On the 4th night, it was lightly raining. The air smelled like wet earth, and I felt drawn to go deeper into the forest. This time, I didn't bother with the sticks, I was confident I'd remember the way back. About 10 minutes into my walk, I noticed a strange light coming from a tree far in the distance. I turned off my flashlight and crouched, waiting. The light vanished after a few seconds. I didn't see anything else, so I assumed it had been a trick of the rain or maybe a reflection, and I kept walking. I climbed a few trees, exploring and enjoying the quiet. Around 25 minutes later, I saw the light again, this time much closer. I instantly shut off my flashlight and climbed another tree to stay hidden. The light was definitely coming from someone else's flashlight now. The person holding it wasn't walking in a straight line, but he was slowly getting closer. Eventually, he came near enough for me to see him clearly through the branches. It was a man. He was breathing heavily and glancing around nervously, like he was afraid someone might be following him. His shirt was torn, and strangely, he was wearing only a pair of boxers. He looked disheveled, like he'd been out in the woods for a long time. He stopped about 15 feet away from the tree I was hiding in and sat down at the base of another tree. I didn't move. I barely even breathed. I just watched. After a moment, he took off a small backpack he was carrying and began rummaging through it. Then his phone rang. He answered it, but he didn't say a word. 10 seconds passed in silence. Suddenly, the man jumped up, threw his phone into the bushes, grabbed his flashlight, and bolted into the forest. He didn't look back. He left his bag behind, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly as he ran. Once the light had disappeared into the woods, I slowly climbed down from my tree and walked over to the bag. My heart was racing, but my curiosity pushed me forward. Inside the bag, I found an expensive-looking camera and a wallet. Just as I was reaching in to take a closer look at the wallet, I froze. Another light appeared in the distance. This one wasn't the man's flashlight. It was different. Someone else was out there, and they were headed toward me. Panicking, I climbed back up the same tree as fast as I could, clutching the branch tightly, trying not to make a sound. Just then, the man's discarded phone, wherever it had landed, started ringing again. The person with the new light began moving faster, coming straight in my direction. When the phone finally stopped ringing, the person holding the second flashlight lingered in the area. They moved around slowly, scanning the forest floor with their beam, searching, but never actually came close to where the man had left his bag. I stayed completely still in the tree, barely daring to breathe. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid they might hear it. After what felt like forever, the light gradually disappeared, swallowed by the thick trees and the early morning fog. Once I was sure they were gone, I carefully climbed down from the tree. My legs were trembling. I didn't even look back at the spot where the bag had been. I just ran. I sprinted through the woods, crashing through bushes and slipping in the mud, too scared to care about making noise. I didn't stop until I reached the edge of the forest and the familiar streets of my neighborhood. By the time I crawled back into my room through the window, it was almost 5 a.m. I couldn't sleep at all. I lay in bed, wide-eyed and shaking, replaying everything that had happened. I wanted to tell someone, but I couldn't risk my caretakers finding out I had been sneaking out at night. They would have been furious, and probably never let me leave the house again. But I also knew I couldn't just do nothing. The next day, I took the bus to the local police station. I nervously explained the entire story to the officer at the front desk, about the man in the forest, the torn clothes, the phone calls, the flashlight, and the strange person who appeared afterward. They seemed skeptical at first, but I was able to convince one of them to come with me and check the area where it all happened. We went into the woods that afternoon, and I led them to the spot where I had seen the man and found the bag. But everything was gone. There was no sign of the backpack. No wallet. No camera. We searched the area where the phone had been thrown, but we couldn't find that either. Not even a cracked screen or battery. It was like none of it had ever been there. In the days and weeks that followed, I kept checking the local news. I looked for missing person reports, break-ins, any unusual activity near the forest. But there was nothing. No one ever reported a man running through the woods in torn clothes. No mention of strange lights or abandoned gear. The police never contacted me again. After that, I stopped sneaking out at night. And I've never gone back to that forest alone since.